So the topic for the first panel, titled Geopolitical Developments Affecting Investment Decisions. Please allow me to introduce the moderator, Lord Edward Udny-Lister of Wandsworth, and Senior Advisor to the Group Chairman at HSBC. Now, Lord Udny-Lister was ennobled by the late Queen in November 2020, and he took a seat in the House of Lords in May 2021. He was made a Privy Councillor in March 2021. So please allow me to introduce him.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for introducing me and giving me an opportunity to be the convener of this panel. So thank you very much. Now, I'm not quite sure how we're supposed to do this, but I would have thought the best thing to do is if my fellow panellists, we all came onto the stage together, I think would be sensible. And then we can start a conversation. And I can certainly also tell you why I think Saudi Arabia is the most exciting country in the world. But, you know, should we all gather here? I think that might be a good idea. And those of you who are awake will notice that there are 3 pictures and 4 people. This is a sort of this is a little test for you. But no, we're very, very lucky that we've actually got a 4th panelist on the panel. And thank you so much for joining us. And I think the best thing to do is that if each of us explain a little bit about ourselves. And also, I think it would be rather good if each of us also told you why we think the kingdom is the most exciting place to be and why you should be investing in Saudi Arabia. I think that might be a good starting point for the whole thing. So, who wants to go first? All yours.
I'll go first. And first, I'd like to say thank you to my wonderful friend and colleague Mohammed Khashoggi, who accepted the last-minute invitation to join us on this panel. Those of you who know Mohammed appreciate his insight into the Saudi economy and his experience in our economy and in international business. So I insisted, after pouring him a cup of coffee, that was straight coffee, but to join us on this panel, and he agreed.
Also, free coffee, yeah?
He agreed. Yeah, sometimes you'll do anything for a cup of coffee. So, my name is Alireza. I was born in Saudi Arabia, born in Jeddah, went to school there, and then finished my schooling between Lebanon, England, and America. I worked, I trained in New York, and then I joined the family business at home. But I have a lot of experience in the finance business. I was on the board of Samba Financial Group before they merged with NCB for 18 years, also on the executive committee, which is, I think was a record. My main family business is the automotive business and IT. We have a big partnership with HP. You know, I'm lucky to have worked in a few sectors in Saudi Arabia, but I think that my experience with Samba was really invaluable. Why do I think Saudi Arabia is a great place to invest in and looking into the future? I've been working there since '86 in Saudi Arabia, and I've seen obviously a huge transformation in the country in those 35 years or 36 years. And we have all lived through, you know, every year people say, oh, we live in changing times. Well, times change all the time. When we look at Saudi Arabia in the 80s, or the region in general, but specifically Saudi Arabia from the 1980s and where it is today, the challenges the country has had to go through. And when we're talking about geopolitical challenges and how they affect our investment decision, there's, in my opinion, no better example in the world than Saudi Arabia of having gone through Saudi Arabia is the center, the focus of the Middle East, probably the most turbulent region in the past few decades in the world. And how Saudi Arabia has managed to live through those times, thrive when it could thrive, be defensive and preserve its capabilities and its wealth in challenging times, and where we are today is in itself a testament of why we should invest in Saudi Arabia. My only regret is that I invested some money outside Saudi Arabia. I should have kept everything there, because the return on investment in Saudi Arabia in the past has been just astounding. I remember landing in Riyadh for the first time in my life in '87 after graduating college and going to work there, and landing in the airport there. It had been open for maybe 2 years or something, 3 years. And we're driving to Riyadh, and I'm asking the driver, where the hell's Riyadh? And he said, no, it's over there. I said, who builds an airport in the middle of the desert? There's nothing around here. And now the airport is crowding the city, actually. And again, my only regret is I didn't buy some property along that stretch of road when it was for, 30 riyals. Now it's for like 30,000 something. But the point is that throughout these turbulent past few decades, investment and growth in Saudi Arabia have never ceased. It has always continued. The country and its economy, its GDP, has kept growing. It has kept diversifying. So from real experience, from being someone who is very, like all of us, very concerned about the safety of your investment, the growth rate of your investment, all of that. From what I've seen in the past 3.5 decades in Saudi Arabia, I can't really think of another market who's been more accommodating to investors than Saudi Arabia. And that's my opening speech.
That's great. Would you like to?
This 2020 vision, right?
Yes, we all wish we were 30 years younger and know what we know now.
My name is Amar Khashoggi, or Khashoggi, as we say in Arabic. My first school was a military school, and I thought that was tough. Then I went to Lebanon and joined Brumana High School, which is an English Quaker boarding school. That was tougher. From there, I came to London, did my A-levels, and then to the US. I graduated from Menlo College in California with my undergraduate, and I got my MBA from Yale University in 1979. And then went back, I did exactly what Ali did, joined the family business. But I'm such a black sheep in the family that I couldn't last for more than 4 years. So 40 years ago, I set up my own company, Amcast Group. We are in the building material business. Our first job was landscaping 40 years ago. And then we moved into many different businesses, but our mainstay is building materials, gypsum production. We have a factory that manufactures gypsum, and we do mining of gypsum rock. We also are in property development and in renewable energy. We have a joint venture with Pacific Green Technologies in a wide variety of renewable energy solutions. I am almost 71 years old, and I have lived through all the kings of Saudi Arabia. That gives you another perspective. Saudi Arabia is a very young country, because I consider myself quite young. And the development of Saudi Arabia has been extremely interesting, because people think of Saudi Arabia as a homogeneous country, but it's not. Every region is different. Riyadh is different from Jeddah. Jeddah is different from the Eastern Province. And each one has different influences on it. Jeddah, because it's close to Mecca and Medina, you have pilgrims that have come from all over the world, including my family. 600 years ago, we came from Turkey, from Anatolia. And many of these people brought culture, different foods, different traditions, and so forth. And so it's very cosmopolitan city. and it has become the trading city or the commercial city of Saudi Arabia, with its own access to the Red Sea. And of course, it's the only place that really had some form of colonization by the Ottomans. They influenced that. The rest of Saudi Arabia is different. Riyadh was really isolated for many, many years before it opened up in recent years. The Eastern Province was affected by the oil industry and the oil companies who brought their own cultural and Saudi Aramco, and we all will know about the graduates of there. After 9/11, I was appointed by King Abdullah, the late King Abdullah, as the chief coordinator of the Saudi outreach program. So I traveled all over the world, taking Saudi delegations and speaking about Saudi Arabia, Saudis, the Arabs, the Muslims. And really what struck me is how little people know about us. So we did a very poor job in really telling the world about ourselves and about our opportunities. But I think this has changed in the last few years, where we have began to organize the way that we speak about our country, introduce our culture to people, as well as introduce investment opportunities. Recently, there has been formation of the National Mining Council in Saudi Arabia, which is chaired by the Minister of Industry and the Vice Minister for Mining. I was fortunate to be invited to become a member of that. The mining industry is a huge investment opportunity for any companies that want to invest in mining. We have more than $2 to $3 trillion worth of mining wealth under the ground. So anyone who wants to invest in mining, come and talk to me. Anyway, I don't want to take any more time, so I leave the rest to the questions. Now I'll turn to my namesake, Amr, another Amr. By the way, we a lot of people have a problem pronouncing our name, so we always say Amr as in hammer.
Well, I get various spellings of my name and various pronunciations. Thank you for having me. My name is Amr Zedan. I was born in California, in Los Angeles, when my parents were studying there. Came back. My family is originally from Medina on the West Coast, but we live in the East Coast, the oil-rich East Coast. So I grew up there until I graduated from high school. Flew back to the U.S., went to college, graduated, and came back. Joined the family business at the time. It was in its infancy. It was focused on energy on a small scale. My father later was appointed in the government, and I sort of assumed a more managerial role in the firm, and we grew into Zedan Group today, which is focused on the energy services in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This was in '97. From then onwards, I've pretty much diversified our activities. So the Zedan Group per se is the family business in Saudi Arabia. Zedan Capital, which is a small boutique, if you will, based out of the U.S., which focuses on VC, fintech, tech, biotech investments, and a vertical that's very dear to my heart, which is Zedan Racing, breeding racehorses, participating in the international sector, having won the Kentucky Derby in 2021, amongst others. So that's something that's really dear to my heart and actually very, very much rewarding. From there came my involvement in the equestrian space in the kingdom. I sit on the board of the Supreme Equestrian Authority, which basically has the mandate to develop, regulate, and promote the equestrian space in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And obviously, as my colleague Abu Husein here chairs the rowing federation, I was appointed as the chairman of the Saudi Polo Federation with the same mandate pretty much. I can go on and on and on as to why Saudi Arabia is the land of opportunity. It may sound like cliche, but it's truly the land of opportunity. I'm a clear example. Saudi Arabia presents the opportunity of what we used to hear in the US, where if you really wanted to pursue a dream and reap the fruits and be successful, that is very much attainable, and I'm a living example. I mean, I came back into the kingdom. My father was a college professor, and I had big dreams. And I've managed with the opportunities and the relative advantages that were provided, is just to pursue, and I would like to think I'm successful. But if you look at the ecosystem at the time, if I take you back into the late 70s and 80s, Saudi Aramco provided just that. If you had the ambition and the ability to align yourself with value creation in terms of providing a service or complementing your local know-how with an international ability to attract corporations, then sky's the limit, literally. Now, what you do from there onwards is really up to you. Now, fast forward to today, what's happening in Saudi Arabia is a transformation, to say the least. What you're having right now is an attempt to exploit every single relative advantage within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, be it location, be it pilgrimage, be it the number of youth we have in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which possesses an opportunity. So any way you look at the verticals, if you go horizontally or vertically, there are opportunities there. Now, if you add a layer of proper regulation and proper market creation for firms to come in and proper rules and governance, you will see a market that is poised for growth in every way in the midst of a turmoil environment. People use geopolitics, and I think it's a cliche. I mean, I don't want to preach here, but I think geopolitics translates into opportunity. At the end of the day, where the opportunity lies, there is significant returns on business really to be done. Geopolitics could go up, north, south, sideways. At the end of it is how you create the opportunity in the midst of this issue. I mean, look what's happening in the U.S. There was peak dependence by primarily the United States and most of the modern world on Chinese value chain, if you will. And right now what's happening is you see a migration. If you look at the port in LA, few decades ago, the dominant incoming ships were from China. Today you see a migration into Vietnam. So you're seeing a transformation. So that poses an opportunity for the Vietnamese. The long and short of it, I think Saudi Arabia, under the leadership right now, and with the direction we're headed, is open for business. And gone are the days where there was a stereotype of you need to adhere to certain structures for doing business. It is open literally for everybody and anybody to have a successful operation in Kingdom and grow it from Saudi to the world as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Perhaps I should just say a few words. I first went to the Kingdom in the late 80s. I was a very young engineer in those days, pretty green, not really knowing what I was doing, working for an international company that was doing work there. And I've come backwards and forwards into the Kingdom over all the years since then. Sometimes as in the private sector, and then later as a government employee, doing things for government, and then back again after I'd done that in the private sector. So I have seen, as an individual, the transformation which has been described to you, and the whole effect of Vision 2030, the way in which societal change has taken place, the way the energy, the enthusiasm. Every time I go to Riyadh now, I seem to go down a road and suddenly find there's a new one being built, or there's another building where I thought something else was. It is just moving at such a pace. And the ambition is just unbelievable. And I don't know if any of you had the opportunity of going to the expo last year in Dubai. But the Saudi stand was one of the most brilliant stands I have ever seen. And I don't know why they don't replicate it and keep moving it around the world. Because you went into this stand and you had a series of audio visuals showing the country and showing that the country is not just, it doesn't look like one place. It is lots of places, and it's so exciting. And you go in, and everybody I know who went in there and watched that audio visual came out saying, I want to go on holiday to Saudi Arabia. That was the effect of it, because it is such an exciting place. And when you realise that the Crown Prince's vision of Neon I mean, Neon, yes, all right, it's a place. It's the size of Belgium. I mean, you have to sort of put these things into some kind of context. They are enormous. The Red Sea Development Corporation is what, 25 five-star resort hotels going up with every one of the top brands you can think of. And these things are being built. They're finishing. I think they're opening the latter part of this year. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong on that. The place is so different. And of course, if you take somewhere like Neon, you're what, 4.5 hours flying time from Europe. So it's actually almost a weekend jaunt. Not quite, but it's very, very close. And so it's just the amazing thing of walking down a street, going into a restaurant, seeing people, seeing the shops, and seeing what they are today compared to what they were a few years ago, and it is transformational. But the big difference is the enthusiasm, energy of individual Saudis and their belief that the country can do almost anything. And I think that is what comes through to you as you go there. And if you're fortunate enough, and I have been involved in employing people in the kingdom, the enthusiasm, well, put it this way, I'd rather be employing there than here, because it's you get a jolly sight better group of people coming to work for you. So I am an unashamed fan and an advocate. And I think anybody who doesn't take the opportunity of having a good hard look at the kingdom and asking themselves, should I put some money here? Should I get involved with a company here? Should I do something with somebody? I think the answer, if you've been there, you will come back saying, yes, I should. I personally always feel that every time I leave the kingdom, I feel I've missed out on another opportunity, and really I should stay there. And the truth is, if I was probably 20 years younger, I'd be living there, not here. So that's what I am. But I think what would be really useful, if I may ask the panel, because I suspect at the back of some of your minds, some of you will be very experienced about doing things in the kingdom. Some of you will know it well. Some of you will have already made investments. But some of you will also be thinking about it, thinking about working with companies. What advice would you give to somebody who wants to get involved? I mean, put it bluntly, where should they start?
I would definitely, as we would, in investing in any country in the world, I would first find a good friend who's from that region. I would find someone who's in a position to help, like Mr. Basil Ghalini. We need to plug BMG, but this is really what you need to do, is go to someone like Basil, declare what your interest is, what sector you're interested in, the scale of the investment you're interested in, and he will come up with, he's got his finger on the pulse. He's got offices all over the kingdom, and he knows what's going on and knows where best to invest. Definitely, and this is what you would want to do in any country. You go to a financial institution and you tell them that I'm interested in investing here, and they will be ready to help you. What I would say, and I'm glad you're saying that, what I would say is that Saudi Arabia is definitely, if I'm going to invest in a market outside my market, if I want to diversify, Saudi Arabia, and we're talking about the past 3.5 decades, has proved how safe and secure investments are in the country. Saudi Arabia is committed to an open market, to a free flow of funds. You invest in Saudi Arabia, you can bring in money anytime you want, take money out anytime you want. In the past 3.5 years, we've had 3.5 decades, we've had every geopolitical a challenge thrown at us, whether military or political or whatever. And two of the biggest ones have been, of course, the Gulf War in 1990, and then towards the end of the 90s as well, when the oil price collapsed and oil was below $10 a barrel. And everybody was saying, oh, the peg to the dollar is going to change. There's going to be capital flow controls. I think throughout this period, Saudi Arabia never wavered from being an open economy, a free movement of funds, no restrictions. And this has proved that this is the kind of place I want to invest in. The returns are good, and if I don't think they're good enough, I can go somewhere else. And so your funds are safe in Saudi Arabia. That's the most important thing. I need security wherever I'm going to invest in, and the ability to access my investment and add to it, reduce it. Freely, and Saudi Arabia is that. Saudi Arabia is like an offshore, almost when people talk about offshore accounts or offshore companies. For us Saudis, I look at advantages of being offshore, whatever, apart from the anonymity part of it. I don't have any tax advantages in investing or in keeping my holdings anywhere other than Saudi Arabia. So far, it's still the best place as a Saudi to be based at, tax-wise, safety-wise, all of that. But definitely, I wasn't just being polite to Basil, but I would go to someone like Basil in Saudi Arabia and say, look, Basil, here I've apportioned this sum, I want to invest it. What do you think? And he'll come up with something, and then send me a commission.
I would second what Ali was saying about Basil. Basil, I've known him for many, many years, and his knowledge of the investment and financial opportunities are par excellence. So you can pay us later for this advertisement. I want to add to what Ali was saying, but from a different perspective. Saudi Arabia and the Crown Prince has come up with Vision 2030. So that's a good place to start. It's available online. You can go and read all about it and see exactly the various areas that the country is focusing on with the strategy of moving the country forward. Saudi Arabia is probably the #1 country in the world that has invested heavily in e-government and in technology. So today, anything you need in Saudi Arabia is also available online. And you can look at it and see exactly what you need to do. For example, in the mining industry, there is a platform. Anyone who wants to get a license for exploration can go in there and apply for it online from anywhere in the world. So it's available. Saudi Arabia is part of the world, and the world is part of Saudi Arabia. We're opening the door to many different opportunities. Mining is one, tourism is another, and so forth and so on. Saudi Arabia is extremely rich in archaeological sites. There are more than 10,000 archaeological sites around the country that have been dormant. In other words, they have not been developed, but now the country is developing them and opening them up for people to come. The most famous is Al-Ula, which is the kind of part of the Shaman, Al-Ula, Petra road of the kings. So these things are all available. The Ministry of Investments, they have Saudi Invest, which is would give you all kinds of, will answer any kind of questions in terms of what of investment opportunities there are and so forth. And recently, and I will stop with that, is that there is now special economic zones that have been announced. 4 special economic zones. King Abdullah Economic City is one of them, where it is like another word for saying free trade zones. So you can come and invest there. You can have bonded warehouses where you can import duty-free, custom-free products, manufacture them and re-export them without having to get complicated in that aspect. If you want to sell it in the base economy, of course, it's like you're importing it from outside and you have to pay duties on that.
Well, I would definitely start with the Ministry of Investment. They've created a one-stop one-shop approach for all government entities. So it's an easy go-to official boutique, if you will, where everything is set up there. You can do it online, you can do it physically, and it's pretty much seamless. So I would start there. I would obviously start by speaking to friends. I don't know anybody who doesn't know a Saudi, but obviously if you have a business that's pretty much has aspirations for growth in Saudi, so I'm sure there are some elements of connectivity that would lead you to there. I mean, Saudi Arabia has a thriving middle class, which is well poised for growth for any corporation that's in the food and goods services. And it's pretty much an island in a turmoil region. If you look at what's going on in the neighborhood, and I don't want to name countries, but in Saudi Arabia, there's growth across the board in that area. So there's that, and then obviously there's the end user. If you're more into the high-end services to the Aramcos of the world within Saudi Arabia, then you approach the Aramco, SABIC, Ma'aden, and others. So I would really start with the Ministry of Investment. The Invest Saudi initiative is pretty much aggressive in attracting and making everything as seamless and easy as possible for international investors.
Yeah, I would bear that out about the Ministry of Investment. I've recently been working with a company is setting up a company there, and they have found it very straightforward.
Yeah.
There's somebody there who will almost handhold you through the whole process, which is all anybody really wants, is to know which form to fill in when. And so it is mightily impressive. Should we move a little bit onto some of the big geopolitical issues at the moment? I mean, the Crown Prince has been very successful in his negotiations with Iran. He has opened up negotiations with Syria. There is peace developing slowly but surely, and in fact, I think there's quite a bit of investment potentially going into Yemen. There is a lot beginning to happen. How do you see that affecting investment opportunities? What's your feel about all these various moves that have been done? Because it does feel like he is taking all the obstacles off the table and moving forward. Is that it?
No, you're right. You're saying peace is developing slowly. I look at it as common sense is developing slowly. It seems, and it's always been talking about the turmoil in the Middle East, and we live in a part of the world that, it seems that somebody's fighting somebody at any one time, and you're not quite sure what the reasons are. I think the old prejudices based on religion or affiliation are slowly giving way to common sense, that it's a different world we live in now, and we are not going to, the populations are growing, and we're not going to make a future to our children if we spend more on weapons than food, and So I think it's an excellent omen, and especially the two powers of Saudi Arabia and Iran, it's high time that we try to find common ground. The tragedy in Yemen, this is not just a war, it's it is a real tragedy, the starvation that's happened, and everything. Saudi Arabia has been trying to stop this for a long time, but other things have to fall in place, which is what the Crown Prince is doing. Syria, the rapprochement with Bashar is also a good sign, regardless of what your personal opinion of Bashar. But again, in these conflicts, the people suffer rather than those leaders. So definitely, it's good that the part that is there and will remain a problem for the Middle East, and will always give us or give radicals cause trouble is the Israeli occupation of Palestine. And it's being, it's in the news now with what the Israelis again are doing in Jenin. It's occupied territory. We don't know why it's not right for Russia to occupy Ukraine, which isn't right, but it's okay for Israel to occupy Palestine. There are these double standards that we have to address now. No one has a right to anyone's country or property or anything, and this is something that will remain a problem. Now, people who want to cause trouble in the Middle East will always use the Israeli-Palestinian issue as an excuse. Say, look, look, you see what's happening here. What's up. So we have to reach a resolution there. People give lip service to a two-state solution. Fine, let's do it. Well, let's do anything that allows everybody in that region. I mean, everybody in that region, to live comfortably in peace and prosperity and spend our hard-earned dollars or reals or whatever it is on proper quality of life issues rather than weapons and tanks and airplanes, and that's but if you look at where we were maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I think geopolitically we are in a much more positive place than we were in the past, even with what's going on in Palestine right now. But still, I think people are getting to that realization that there's a better way forward. There's a better way, and there's a way where we can all live together and prosper. And I think a recognition that younger generations are getting fed up. The younger generations want jobs, want future, that's what we need to build. And that's what Saudi Arabia is doing, because like Amr says, for instance, the tourism sector, we're creating new opportunities of employment in Saudi Arabia. It used to be that in a young and growing country, the public sector could provide employment to all the graduates, but no longer. People cannot just rely on government jobs anymore. I mean, we just, otherwise we're going to have 4 or 5 people sitting around one desk. It's not going to. So the Vision 2030 really reflects the needs of Saudi Arabia, and in a larger sense, the needs of the whole region is to create jobs, create employment, give people, make people look forward to a prosperous future rather than worry about the petty differences and, of course, some bigger issues in the region.
Well, war and conflict is anti-economic prosperity. We've been talking earlier about economic prosperity and investment opportunities in Saudi Arabia. It's not going to be interesting to invest in a conflict area. So, giving peace a chance, to use an old cliche, is very important for economic development and for people to feel safe to come into areas that are not conflict zones and invest their money and remove away that extra political risk. Saudi Arabia, in its Vision 2030, they have decided that they must have strategic partnerships with the rest of the world, not just America and Europe, but also with China, with Russia, with India, and these will help have a movement and transfer of technologies and best practices and collaboration and bring investors from all these countries. The Chinese are big investors in Saudi Arabia today. So are the Japanese, and I'm expecting the Russians will be knocking on our doors very, very soon. The settling differences with Iran and with Yemen and Syria and hopefully Lebanon and Sudan, these will benefit the whole region. And today, I think the recent rapprochement that has taken place has given Saudi Arabia a leading role in getting the whole region up in terms of economic prosperity and better chances for a more fertile ground for investments. So I think it's a great thing that is happening, and hopefully it will continue. War and conflict only benefit defense companies and defense manufacturers, armaments, and so forth. And that takes away money that can be invested in healthcare, that can be invested in education, that can be invested in food security. So all of these things which will benefit the people of the region and the rest of the world as well.
the leadership in Saudi Arabia and His Highness the Crown Prince are laser focused on economic growth. Simple. Anything that adds to that in the form of business or even security are absolutely welcomed. Again, we live in a very tough neighborhood. And throughout the years, regardless of the causes, we had a lag in our neighborhood contributing to security. For any economic growth, you require security to provide stability for investors and growth. So what we see right now is a solid leadership that basically translates all the political equity into having an amicable peace initiative or some sort of treaty that adds ultimately to the provisions of Vision 2030, which at the end is just a plan, but it's a roadmap for Saudi Arabia's growth. So security is an integral part, be it regionally or internationally. And we all see Saudi Arabia in the past year, 2 years right now, zeroing all the, if that's a word, zeroing all the problems in the neighborhood. Now to the Arab-Israeli conflict, which is an Arab-Israeli conflict. Saudi Arabia has been the trailblazer in providing solutions. To cut a long story short, Saudi Arabia has put out an initiative, which is the Arab Peace Initiative, which is in accordance to international law and UN resolutions as well. And what does it say? Adhere to the UN resolutions. Two-state solution, 1967 borders, right to self-determination, right for refugees to come back, a right for a decent living. Once that is established, it's a cascade. It's a knot that's opened up and all problems were sorted. So when it comes back to policy making today, everything revolves around stability and security, which ultimately feeds into economic growth. And that's the vision, and that's the determination by the leadership, primarily His Highness the Crown Prince as well.
Thank you. Now, you've heard a little bit. What about any questions any of you've got? We've got a roving microphone somewhere. Somebody's got one somewhere, but and I can see a couple of hands up. I'm going to do them basically from where I can see them at the moment because we're actually slightly blinded by lights here. But if I go about 4 rows back, there's a gentleman in the middle. Will you hand up, sir? That's you, yes. Do you want to? And then after you, there's a gentleman sort of just behind you. That's right.
Thank you. Owen Bennett from Arab News. You talked about some of the reforms that we need in the markets in terms of regulations to help further boost the attractiveness. I wonder if you could just expand a little bit more on that and just explain what reforms you'd like to see or what you think reforms have been done so far that have been particularly successful.
Who's going to go? Change the order. Why don't you start?
Yeah.
I'd say age before beauty, right?
One of the biggest reforms that have taken place in Saudi Arabia has been in the legal system. The whole court system has been completely overhauled. Judges have been also looked at in terms of their abilities, their expertise, their certifications. And today, you don't need to go to court. You do it online. Honestly, you know, you're suing somebody, you do it online, and the judge will attend a Zoom call with both parties, and you sort it out. And it's fairly speedy, and it has cleared a lot of the cases that used to be bogged down in the bureaucracy of the court systems. We see this all over the world, and Saudi Arabia is no different. So that has helped a lot. Also, many of the laws in Saudi Arabia have been subjected to reform or revision. The labor law is definitely one of them, investment laws, etc. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not an expert. I'm more of a user of these, or being a beneficiary of these laws.
Husein.
No, in terms of business, I think we could use more transparency in our economy in Saudi Arabia. I think we're lagging behind, if there's any it's not a criticism, but I think we're still lagging behind in providing information about the performance of our economy in different sectors. And we're talking about guiding people where to invest, and we're not just talking about foreign direct investment into our economy, but even local investors. We're always, employing consultants and trying to find out, intricacies of certain sectors that we want to invest in, and trying to dig up for information that in England or Europe, America would be just readily available. So that we need to do a better job at reporting and in a timely manner. Very often I laugh when I get information published in Arab News or whatever. This is what happened in 2019, but it's 4 years later. Can we get more current information? So that I would request all government divisions or departments to do better.
I mean, I think they've covered it all. In the interest of saving time, I guess if someone has another question, so
There is.
there's not much to add.
The gentleman, yes, has got the microphone.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get somewhere if you don't have a map. And Vision 2030 is that map, and it's a great thing to see a clarity of vision. Two of the key aspects of that map are the stimulation of the private sector, and whether that's through domestic or international investment, and then subsequent freeing up of through regulation and governments, and also the activities of the PIF. But to what degree would you see the PIF as actually being a threat to the private sector in terms of actually over-indulging in its activities?
Well, can I take the Fifth Amendment here?
No, you can't. You have to answer.
No, I mean, let's just go back to PIF's real role. PIF's role is to restructure the Saudi international. That's one of its roles, international investments as a sovereign wealth fund. We were lagging in that area. We've weathered the storm in 2008 because we were very conservative. But I think we missed out on other opportunities as well. So PIF's mandate right now is to exploit all opportunities to ensure future wealth of the kingdom and leverage that growth, that wallet, so to say, to enable another wallet internally to build up sectors of which your typical private sector won't be able or isn't able from a financial point of view to jumpstart. I mean, you look at ambitious projects the likes of NEOM, Red Sea, developments in other areas. You really need a high-powered financial muscle to come in and enable. And that's essentially PIF's role. So you have two PIFs. You've got the PIF, which is mandated with international investments, and then you've got the local enabler, so to say. Now, are there instances where you see PIF investing in a company that could compete or go head-on with a local company? Possibly. But I'm in the sector, and we had a company under Zedan Group that was basically a competitor to a PIF company. Ultimately, that PIF company ended up acquiring the company we're partnered with. But that's growth. That's an exit. That's something that's welcomed. But what I could assure you, there's very strong, sophisticated regulation as Saudis, and I'm no official, but as Saudis, we're doing a bad job in highlighting that. What's very important for any investor coming into Saudi Arabia is to realize and appreciate that there is stringent regulation that acts as an honest broker in assuring that everything is being conducted, treated in a fair manner.
I'm going to answer it in a bit differently. 80% of businesses in the GCC are owned by family business. So that actually creates an economic risk. If there is any squabbles between those family members, once the founders pass away, as they say, the founder starts the business, his children grow the business, and his grandchildren waste the business. So it's a well-known fact. 5% of businesses, family businesses, survive beyond the third generation or fourth generation. So PIF's role, as Amr said, it's an enabler. It's really to try to push for more public-private partnerships. And to do that, they take over the more riskier investments, investments in infrastructure and what have you. And this helps to pave the road for other investors to come in, especially small companies. And there have been a few small companies that have started with ingenious ideas, but they ran out of money. And PIF stepped in and went into partnerships with them and helped them. So this is the long answer to your question, that PIF is not a threat. It's an enabler.
Yeah, look, is PIF a government entity, or is it a public sector, private sector entity, maybe owned by the government, and that depends how you want to answer who owns Newcastle. But the truth is, it's in between. And PIF is part government and part it's the government's kind of creation. But exactly as Amr said, it has the ability to execute and create projects that the private sector is either too concerned about investing in, or can't for lack of infrastructure. For instance, PIF can't build this resort project in the Red Sea without infrastructure leading up to it. Now, when you build that infrastructure, then the other private sector, like me, you know, we come and then we build our stuff, and I build my dealership and you build your... So in that sense, it is very useful. In another sense, it's useful because it is a government arm that is now experiencing the trials of the private sector. So a lot of improvements in regulations, and it comes directly from PIF, trying to do what the private sector does, and then saying, hey, how does this work? This doesn't make sense. We have to change the regulations. So in that sense, we very much welcome PIF in our midst as private investors, because it is now someone who's a lot closer to the government than we are, giving the government first-hand feedback as to what we need to do to improve the investment environment, to improve development. And then when we're talking about roadmap, I look at it this way: 2030, you can't draw a roadmap until you've taken that road. So I don't think 2030 is necessarily a roadmap, but it's a compass. It's giving us a direction of where to go. And we know where we want to go, and we'll sort out. We'll draw the map as we get along, as we see the challenges and the obstacles that we have to overcome. We'll take care of that. But we need to know where we're going, where we're heading, and I think we're definitely heading in the right direction.
If I may add, one more benefit is that PIF brings in also an increased use of corporate governance. Many companies are, when they go into partnership with PIF, they have a very strict and corporate governance ethics and rules that they actually help these companies adopt. So it's all for, that's another benefit that I wanted to just add.
Thank you. I think we've just about time for one more, because we're almost out of time. There's a gentleman in the second row. Yes, please. If you can, I don't know where the mic is.
Oh.
Or somebody got the microphone already? Oh, well, please. You.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Sonny,
we can't actually see very well here.
Thank you very much. Sonny Ojagger, foreign direct investment consultant in Canary Wharf. So, do I believe geopolitical developments affect investment decisions? I'll say yes, personally. So what we've seen in the past 3 years, 2-3 years, and it has accelerated quite recently, is that in foreign direct investment, most of those investors, they look, whether institutional or private, they look at the geopolitical situations and they look at all those developments, because most of them, they are into long-term investment. So I'd like to know, how is Saudi Arabia, how are they positioning themselves in the geopolitical changes that are happening in the world today? We've seen tectonic plate shifting. It's quite difficult to talk about, to have such a very beautiful theme and not talk about what's happening in the global south, what is referred to as the global south. 80% of the global market, we see the BRICS. So all the investment, the cross-border investment people going to do or institutions going to do, they look at how are all these things going to develop. So Saudi Arabia is now heading towards peace in the region. They are emerging as a leader in the region. We also see in Africa, a couple of weeks ago, in the new global pact for a financing pact in Paris, we've seen a lot of African head of state, and they were talking about one single thing: multilateralism, global reform of the international financing institution. So my question is, how does the government of Saudi Arabia intend to leverage and to take the leadership in the region and also in the world with what is happening in the geopolitical sphere? Thank you.
Thank you. Could I suggest that when you reply to this, make any other comments you wanted to make just as a final, because I think we have really run out of time. Yeah. Go.
I mean, well, Saudi Arabia is a member of the G20. And obviously, we've just showcased what Saudi Arabia is about very briefly right now. So I would invite you to come to Saudi Arabia and explore and sort of scout what would make sense to you, your business, or your clients. So that's one aspect. But what we're also forgetting is the role of the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, PIF, the investment arm of Saudi Arabia, is to seek opportunities in Africa, in Europe, and the globe in general. So if you also have sort of the opposite direction, coming into Saudi Arabia, proposing an opportunity that would make sense and ultimately feed into the Vision 2030 and everything we're doing, that's also a possibility. We're not a one-way highway. Saudi Arabia is a two-way highway. So you could actually come up with an opportunity. And what really distinguishes or sort of moves the investment needle is, does it make business sense? That's what Saudi Arabia is about, making business sense to incomers and making business sense for Saudi Arabia going long as well.
I think you answered the question perfectly here. I think we also alluded to the fact that Saudi Arabia is developing these strategic partnerships with other countries around the world, including countries in Africa as well. And I think I don't want us to also have rosy glasses and think, sugarcoat anything, any issues. Saudi Arabia, like I said earlier, is as young as I am. I have lived through all the kings of Saudi Arabia, so that gives you an idea. So we're still on a learning curve. I don't think that everything is perfect. I think Ali mentioned that we still need to have more transparency. Maybe we need to have at our fingertips updated information that is important and essential for international as well as local investors. So these hopefully are going to be areas where we will have improvements. So Saudi Arabia is open for business 24/7. You can do business with Saudi Arabia online, as I mentioned several times. So welcome.
I think it's clear that Saudi Arabia's leadership have Saudi Arabia's future in mind. We have a young and growing population, and we've got to build a country that will create a high-quality life for them. That's the number one aim. Of course, part of it, you can't do this in a sea of turmoil. We are the biggest and richest country in the region. So these are responsibilities that we have, and we have to act accordingly. It's not something that we look or run after, but it's the stability and the prosperity of Saudi Arabia that's the main concern for our governments. Then there are two things that have been thrust upon us, whether we like it or not. We are the biggest exporters of oil in the world. So, okay, we have to play a responsible role there. And we are the center of Islam in the world with Mecca and Medina. So we do have to have, so whether we like it or not, we have important responsibilities to execute. We cannot walk away from that. But as I said, having said that, it's the future and prosperity of Saudi Arabia that is the number one priority for policymakers in the kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just a comment,
Please.
if you don't mind,
Please.
on the PIF. I totally agree with the gentleman have said, sustainability and also pushing business forward. It's complementary rather than competing. But I believe there is an important issue of raising jobs in the kingdom. The fund over the past 5 years, he raised more than 500,000 jobs. The intention is to go to 1.8 million through the coming years, which indeed has helped to push down the unemployment rate from 12.7% in 2017 to 8% last year. So I think job creation is very important that DBI has done.
Well, I'm afraid we could keep going for quite a while, actually, and judging by some of the people who wanted to speak, we certainly, but we have run out of time. So I think, could we just thank the panel very much?